to begin. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, may I request you to kindly be seated as we are now about to begin. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are now about to begin. Welcome once again to the Pakistan Petrochemical Symposium, all set to cover the theme of the path to mega-industrialization. Our next conversation, it's a moderated panel discussion with some of the key stakeholders of the petrochemical industry in Pakistan. And more importantly, this is going to be a deep dive into developing and navigating and designing the roadmap of the petrochemical roadmap of Pakistan. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you to kindly be seated as our distinguished panelists and speakers have all arrived, and we'd like to get our next session started. For those of us who are watching us online, please use the hashtag ParkPetrochem for any of the information, the nuggets of wisdom that you're collecting here that you would like to probe more upon, or perhaps send a question to any of our partners, our panelists. You can put that out there as well. Gentlemen, may I request you all to kindly be seated as we are now beginning our program. So when it comes to the potential, there's a funny thing about it. We've heard our speakers talk about the enormous potential petrochemicals and the policy framework, this right conducive policy framework can have for Pakistan. But more importantly, there still remains a gap that is hindering from this potential to becoming a reality. How do we fill those gaps? How do we make sure that those gaps are not just filled in the immediate times, but also can be something which is scalable and we can build upon in the years and the decades to come? Especially because if you look at the forecast for the petrochemical industry around the world, it is something enviable, something that Pakistan needs to be a part of. Petrochemicals are rapidly becoming the largest driver of global oil demand. The growth in demand for petrochemical products means that petrochemicals are set to account for over a third of the growth in oil demand to 2030 and nearly half to about 2050. So we're not talking just tomorrow and day after. We're talking about the next decades and well into this century. How do we plan for that? Let's find out what the experts have to say. Ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite our worthy moderator for this session. Please join me in welcoming the CEO of Namir Industrial Chemicals Limited and the former chairman of PCMA. Please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Zafar Mahmood. Zafar Saab, we're trusting you with a very powerful segment. Please take a seat. I will also invite your panelists and then it will be handed over back to you. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming this illustrious panel. First up, we have the CEO and the Executive Director of Engro Polymer and Chemicals. Please welcome Mr. Jahangir Piracha. Please also join me in welcoming the CEO of ICI Pakistan. Please welcome Mr. Asif Juma. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the CEO of Gatron Industries Limited. Please welcome Mr. Shabbir Diwan. Shabir Saab is engaging with media, will be joining us shortly. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the CEO of Tufail Chemical Industries Limited, Mr. Zubair Tufail. Last but definitely not the least, the Chief Executive of Lotte Chemical Pakistan Limited. Please welcome Mr. Humair Ijaz. This conversation is titled as the Petrochemical Roadmap for Pakistan. We've spoken about potential. Translating that potential into a reality is a must. As my business coach would always say, do not just look at the potential, look at the reality of people. This could also make for great dating advice. But ladies and gentlemen, over to you, Zafar Saab, for this panel.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you everyone for participating in this session. And thank you the team for giving me the opportunity to moderate this session. First of all, I would like to have some questions with the panelists here. So my first question to you is that the Pakistan's petrochemical import is around $3 billion currently. And with the current pace and the inflation and everything, we expect that in next 8 to 10 years, they may exceed $5 billion annually. So under the circumstances, what do you think your company's vision will be? And how can we help the country in combating this import burden on the country? So starting with anybody, sir? Asad?
Thank you. And Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Corporate Pakistan Group, for actually putting together this seminar. And I think I would be greatly amiss if I didn't acknowledge the effort that actually went into bringing everyone together under one roof, on one platform, to talk about a policy that is long overdue. The absence of a petrochemical policy in Pakistan has actually, unfortunately, been the main reason for the underinvestment that has taken place in this sector of the economy. It's not that it's been totally devoid of investment. There has absolutely been investment, starting from ICI Pakistan itself, which invested in a polyester staple fiber manufacturing facility in 1982-83, which is a downstream petrochemical product. That was then followed subsequently, again by ICI Pakistan, with an investment in a PTA plant at Port Qasim, which is now owned by Lotte. It was divested some years ago. But again, that was all part of the integration. And what that actually tells you is this is a sector where you need a level of integration. But it doesn't always come in one go. So you can't actually just pick it up and plonk it down. You actually got to do it in phases. In the case of polyester, the phase was polyester staple fiber, polyester filament yarn. Then it went back into PTA. If you look at the consumption of petrochemicals and plastics per capita in Pakistan, again, we're at the low end of the pyramid. And that's because we don't have adequate availability and supply. And you find, and you can look at this across the globe, that whenever you increase availability, you increase usage. Now, what do we need as an industry to encourage investment? You need continuity of policy, you need predictability, you need transparency, and you need to recognize that investors invest for returns. So no one is saying that tariff should be a guarantor of profit. Tariff should be an equalizer of inequities that exist in the environment in which you operate. So, what are we looking at? If we want to invest, we're talking $3 billion. What are the industries? Whether it's Engro with a propane dehydrogenation unit, whether it's ICI with a polyester staple fiber expansion, Novatex with a further expansion in bottle polymer or filament yarn. So all this will happen. And then, in due course, we will need to look upstream. We will need to look upstream for an integrated complex, which will then actually start from refining to a cracker, and through the cracker, you have the olefins chain, the ethylene chain, you have your xylenes. So you look after your motor gasoline requirement, which we're in deficit, we need to import. You will look at your polyethylene, your polypropylenes, your ethylene glycols. So it becomes one entire raft of products.
Thank you very much, sir. Shabir sir,
जी,
your comments, please.
I think एक तो policy की जैसे आसिफ ने बात की. The other thing is that now we are at the right time where the downstream has grown and the midstream has grown. So we have that volume or that base on which the midstream can further go and the upstream can further grow. So this is the right time to, as they say, put all the pieces of the puzzle together by bringing in the policy. Because एक ज़माना था कि petrochemical midstream and upstream, the volumes, it's a chemical industry. So the volume of the plant, the scale of the plant was smaller, so investment was smaller. But technological improvement has brought the scale to a very high level. And particularly the Chinese have gone far beyond in increasing the scale of one single plant. So that means the investment of one single plant also increases. So you need a lot of investment. And when it involves a lot of investment, the investor obviously seeks predictability down the line about the environment, about the tariff, about a lot of other things. So that's why petrochemical policy at this moment is very important.
Good, thank you very much. Tufal bhai, Zubair sir, आपके क्या comments हैं on the question was that Pakistan is already under heavy import bill, like for petrochemicals, we are already spending more than $3 billion annually, which are increasing like with every year. So if this trend goes on, so we may be like the import bill of the petrochemical may exceed $5 billion in a year. So what do you think it should be the measures the country should take, our industry should take, or if you talk about specifically about your company, what measures should we take?
You are right that today we are importing petrochemical worth about 3 billion. But in short period of time, it will cross 5 billion. Unless we go for import substitution, I would like to say here about Anglo. As they are going for the PDH plant, this plant will replace current imports of about 500,000 tons or more of polypropylene, which means it will be saving around, the current price is around $1,600 a ton. So $800 million it can save. So similarly, we have to look for the investment where we can replace the imports. If you replace the imports, it is same as you earn from the exports. Similarly, if it is an import substitution. So we all have to, in the sector, look for it. And I would like to say in our own industry, we are currently producing 110,000 tons of LABSA. It requires a back integration of lab, which we are working at the moment, and same company, UOP Honeywell, is doing our feasibility and all these things. And this is also an import of something about $200 million a year, $200 million a year.
Good.
So at this time, I think government have to give us certain basic assurances. We don't ask them for big duty protections or nothing, a minimum of duty protection, and then the continuation of the policies. That what we say today, when you say that you are exempt from tax, it has to be exempt from tax of all kinds. If you say that it is 10 years tax exemption, it should also be exempt from the turnover tax. Otherwise you say, oh no, income tax you don't pay, but you still pay 1.5% turnover tax. So you have to make the things very transparent. Okay, the local tax authorities can play with the Pakistani investors, but foreign investor will never be, they will never be happy with these kind of things. If you say anything, it has to be very transparent, clear. This is the only way you can make import substitution, you can bring foreign investors. The foreign investors are willing to come, but they need certain assurances which is required from the government.
Very good. Thank you very much. Umair bhai, any comments from your side, please?
Yes, I
Lotte
think
has been playing very important role in the country's overall chemical sector. So please, your comments
so
as well.
I think this petrochemical industry of Pakistan, we are actually now lost a lot of time. We are very behind. When I talk about the PTA industry, the PTA plant should have been expanded 5-6 years ago. And everything was there. The market is there, the demand is there, the population is driving the demand. But why the investor is not able to put the money on the table is simply because they have no assurance that once this investment is done, what is going to happen the year after in the next budget, in the next government. So, I mean, not having a policy which is independent of which government is there is very important. It has to be a longer term, 15-year, 20-year vision which needs to be implemented. That will only entice the shareholders to put money in. So Lotte, I represent Lotte, and Lotte is one of the biggest petrochemical companies in Korea. They are investing in Russia, in USA, in Vietnam. So when they are making these investment decisions, they never talk about or question me about do you have the right manpower in Pakistan? Do you have the right talent in Pakistan? Do you have the demand in Pakistan? The only question that comes is, are you sure the tariff is going to stay through the next budget? Are you sure that minimum turnover tax will go away soon? So these are questions which we are struggling, and the role of a chief executive is becoming more like of going to the government on every budget, and that's the major part of the job is unfortunately to handle those issues. We like to be independent, we like to focus on the business, we would like the government to just give us a policy, a fair policy, a regionally competitive policy. Let us have that policy and then let us do our work to expand this business in Pakistan. So I think this is the first step, and I'm very happy that this symposium has been arranged, and we look forward that very soon, we are already late as I said, and we need this policy because Lotte is also ready for the investment and Pakistan needs it.
Thank you. Sir. Faisal
Ji, thank you, Zafar. So I think a lot of ground has already been covered. I can talk a little bit more about the projects which Engro is looking at. I think any mega investment, so let's go back a little bit in history and why policies are important. As Umair was just saying that you don't want, the investor wants a level of continuity. Now Pakistan, alhamdulillah, has always had a track record which is very, very good with policies. You know, whatever got committed in any policies, any change in government, the governments have honored those policies. So that gives, policy actually gives confidence to the investor that the change won't happen, and the commitments which are made, which we adhere to for the period that policy is, you know, applicable. Let's look at fertilizer policy. 2 million tons of fertilizer capacity got added. Imagine in today's money, if you had to import 2 million tons of fertilizer. It's about $1.5 to $1.7 billion, and which is essential for food security. Now that policy was brought in 2012, multiple regime changes, political as well as military governments, but it stayed on. That gives the confidence to the investor that a policy would stay. Coming back to the petrochemical policy, which is for which we are having this symposium. First of all, I'm very, very thankful to Board of Investment and corporate group also for, you know, this organizing this important thing. I think that policy will unlock, and all the investors are here, you know, who have shown interest. But one important point, I think, which everybody must understand, that foreign investment at times comes in shape of joint ventures also. It is not just that the local investors, if they have a good project, they can always go out and pitch this as a joint venture opportunity, which brings in FDI also. So I'm not saying that people cannot do it locally, but at times there are technological challenges. At times you are bringing a new technology, you want people to join your projects, and could be a joint venture also. Engro is right now, so the last fertilizer policy brought about good 2 billion plus sort of size of the investment in Pakistan, and I'm saying just 1 year it has saved you $1.6 billion of import substitution. If this policy is in place, you're talking about 500,000 tons of polypropylene, which is today, and by the time the plant sort of gets commissioned, it will be probably more nearer to 800,000 tons of. Now, these projects take time. They are long gestation projects. So a policy, if you give today, an engineer and put the plant, will take you 4 years to actually have the production. Imagine if you have multiple projects of this size. 4 billion is what's being promised if the policy is there. That's a very large investment which is being promised in Pakistan. Engro is looking at primarily greenfield projects, which is primarily in the area of polypropylene, which is our flagship program. They have committed, it's a listed company, so it's announced, they're doing engineering. Methanol, again, they're looking at that project. And our existing PVC business obviously has still room to go to the world scale, which will have additional investments coming in. Now, for the shareholders and people who want to invest, they want a continuity. They want to know what will stay when they make that investment decision, and what will be the guarantee that those things will not be taken away. If the incentives were not there, and Umair really very ideally spoke about it, an international investor, the market demand is there, the skill set is, they have worked in Pakistan. Why the investment never came to Pakistan? That's a great question. If things, the way they are, were so good, why aren't people lining up and queuing up to come to Pakistan and rather than going to Vietnam or other places? So if they are not coming to Pakistan, we must also, analyze why they are not coming to Pakistan. And why they are not committing these large sums of money when the market demand is also there. I mean, the market exists, but they're not still coming. And that's the key question.
Good. So as such, sir, the market is there and the potential of investment is there, and a lot of companies are ready to invest in the country, even all this difficult situation. But what we need is the consistency in policy and have a clarity, as Umair Sahab very rightly said. The job of CEO is not to do the business, it's primarily to safeguard his interest. So this exercise, I have been heading the chemical committee on the tariff in my chemical association for last many years. So frankly speaking, we are spending almost 3 to 4 months every year on this budget exercise, where we try to ensure the interest of our industry, and then we keep negotiating and arguing with the government authorities. This is the job of every industrialist, to secure the interest. I fully agree, but if a clear policy is in place for a certain time period, it will give definitely a sort of surety to the investor, and more investors will come. With regards to chemical sector, we are not talking about the upstream right now, we are talking about the midstream. There's a lot of potential, like in the presentation we just had in the first session. So this country badly needs a cracker, whether it's a gas cracker, as a naphtha cracker, or the coal cracker. So we need to have that as well, but since the capital and required for that project is not available right now, so let's start with something. The something is that I fully endorse their views that let's start with the midstream, so that something is there, the market is built, and it will definitely give an opportunity for the people to come and invest in the upstream as well. So thank you very much for your comments. So my next question would be that you must have seen that transportation and the freight has been a big challenge, especially in post-COVID, during COVID situation. So the freight charges, if I compare with China or any other country, has been, I think, 7 to 10 times what they were before COVID. So large companies were able to manage bulk supplies or whatever the option they had, but the most troubled sector was the SME. They were having a lot of trouble, a lot of difficulty in arranging the transportation. And my view, if we like strengthen our industry, upstream industry and the midstream industry, this will definitely make this local supply of these things available. So we will not be worried about the this part, whatever happens, what happened in the recent past. So I again need your views, Asif, please.
Thank you. I think it's a good question, and you talk about the effect of higher freight rates or disruption in logistics and how it impacts the SME. It's actually impacted the entire industrial base. Okay, the SMEs are impacted more because they have issues with working capital. But when you have local production and you have local availability of raw materials, it increases the activity in that ecosystem. Right? So when we talk about increasing demand, we talk about market penetration, we talk about adoption, it has to come through locally available raw materials. If we think that we can actually emerge as a major player in synthetic textiles or in PET long term by basing the industry mainly on imported intermediates, that's not going to happen. There'll always come a point where you're actually going to hit that glass ceiling. And the way around that, in terms of managing the entire value chain, is domestic investment.
Thank you, sir. Shibir sir, your views, please.
The freight thing which happened in the world. One thing was very popular in the Japanese system, just in time. So the disturbance in the freight and the logistics sort of put a dent on that policy of just in time. Means the industry has to now keep a larger stock of raw materials in their hands. And that, you're right, it has affected SME more because they have limited working capital resources. And that's where what Asif said, you need local supply to help them meet that challenge. The other thing is that in the petrochemical industry, as you go from in some levels of midstream and in some levels of upstream, the raw material is no longer physical, it's liquid. So the current problem is container problem. So if you have local production of the midstream here, that local production is importing liquid cargo. So that gives you a diversification as far as freight options are concerned. So that also is a thing which will help Pakistan if the petrochemical industry expands.
Thank you, sir. Zabas
I think in the last in the COVID period, we have seen that the freights were playing the important role. Freights tripled, or maybe they have gone
10 times.
Not 10 times exactly, but at least 4 or 5 times freights have gone up all over the world. And those industries who were dependent on the imported raw material, they suffered a lot. And then it also affected our exports. We are not able to export because we are not able to get sufficient containers. Even the product is ready, at the end of the time they say the containers is shut out.
Yes.
So these are the challenges we are facing. But I think this is the time that local industry should look for such products where they can get the raw material locally. And in my opinion, Thercoal is a place from where we can make, after coal gasification, we can make many raw material. I would like to say like urea also. In China there is several urea plants, they are totally making urea from coal. So Pakistan also have to look, because you have sufficient quantity or stocks of Thercoal which is good for next 100 or 200 years. So we should look into it. But to make the coal gasification, it requires special support from the government. A private sector cannot do. Of course, Anglo started doing business with having a power plant over there near the Thercoal plant, but it needs much more than that. Government should come a little bit extra to support them. Ultimately, it will support the government that the imports will come down. So we have to see and look into it, that how the other countries, especially I would say China, how they are using coal for the petrochemical industry. Pakistan also should do in the same way.
Thank you, sir. Umair bhai, any comments from your side on the freight part?
Yes, I think it's a major issue right now. But if you look at the petrochemical industry, all of us here, we cannot dictate our pricing. We have to follow the regional prices, whatever are prevailing. So the PTA that I'm selling in Pakistan cannot be claimed as it is different from the PTA coming from Thailand or the PTA coming from China. So issue always comes down to how good you are in your supply chain and in your purchasing. How much can you say? Because your price is fixed. You're going to sell at this price no matter what. So it's the costs that you have to look at. And this freight market has exerted a lot of pressure on those costs. And those costs, unfortunately, at times have to be passed down to the downstream industry and they have to absorb it. How to get rid of this problem? Very simple. Use as much as domestic material as possible. So domestic industry needs to grow. So I'm importing paraxylene. I wish paraxylene was available in Pakistan.
Yeah.
I mean, our job would be much easier. Our business would be more stable. But we are dependent on importing paraxylene and we have to look around the region and find paraxylene. And then there are issues like India was the cheapest source for paraxylene for us, but we decided to ban trade with India. So we have to move to an expensive source. The further sources, the more the freight. So yes, it's a key issue for us, and the solution again comes down to produce as much as in Pakistan as possible.
Thank you, sir. Jangir bhai, your...
Okay. I think, so freight, a very interesting question. Primarily it was the containers, the freight cost actually substantially increased for anybody. So intermediates which are not made in Pakistan were coming in containers. They don't come in bulk and they don't come in a liquid form. So primarily that really showed, the COVID showed us that how important it is to produce some of these key things which comes as raw material in containers. Ideally that all material should be produced in Pakistan. Now, as Shabir bhai was also illustrating here, that the feedstocks for intermediates, which could be either in a gaseous form like ethylene, paraxylene, the freight charges did not, because these are specialized ships, they can only carry, let's say, a specific gaseous chemical, freight, and they're dedicated for this service. The freight cost for them did not go expansionally high or remained about same. So there was hardly any impact of freight on these specialized containers which were bringing specialized materials to Pakistan. So if Pakistan has an intermediate, all the intermediates which is required by our downstream, if they are produced in Pakistan, you would not have ideally such high freight cost. And also it will reduce port congestion also, because if you look at Pakistan, Karachi's bulk of trade is, Gwadar is coming up. Everything is going through these two ports out of Karachi, And these are, same places you're bringing raw material. If that raw material ideally is coming as a gas or as a liquid, you're also reducing the load on your ports, congestion, damages. We see all of those issues through our ports also. So COVID, I think, was an opportunity when the entire system was extremely stressed. And we saw what happened to economies which were very, very dependent on some of the key products coming from China or from Middle East, and how it impacted and the disruptions hit businesses. I think that also is a very important, I think incentive for our industry to create capacity in Pakistan, where our downstream industry or the economy does not suffer because of any of these disruptions which will happen, because of supply chain problems. Like right now, I think China has again sort of done Shenzhen. I think Shenzhen is gone into lockdown. So anybody who's buying anything from Shenzhen is going to be in deep trouble, So those things will happen. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your nice views and very candid views. So as such, in my own experience, the bulk freights haven't gone up that much, but the containerized cargo has been a trouble. So if the industry is localized here, so we produce locally. So besides providing just in time, as Shabir Sahab said, so we will be able to like save on the extraordinary cost which we are currently paying. It's not only the cost, it's the time as well. The material which used to come in a 1 month time is now taking 3 months, and sometimes it's not guaranteed. And most of the vessels don't come direct, so they come via some other country. So at times the containers got stuck in between and they remain there for weeks. So hope that if we develop our midstream or upstream industry in Pakistan, so this will be a great help to the SME sector as well, and there will be growth of industry in that sector as well. Thank you, sir. So now my specific questions about the respective companies of your respective company. Shabir Sahab, I'll start with you. Your company is, mashallah, exporting more than goods worth more than $300 million. So I would like to listen some views from you, and we should be a guideline for other companies as well. What do you want to say about how to increase exports for other sectors as well?
Yes, we are the largest non-textile exporter of the country. Means we are exporting non-textile products and nearly 5 or 6 products, not only one product, and exports of over $200 million. So, one of the basic things is when we set up this plant, the key element, there are many things. Obviously, you have to have the right marketing setup, you have to have the right product, everything. So, सबसे पहले तो फिलॉसफी जो खालिद ने कहा ना कि जुनून है तो मंजिल नज़र आ रही है, तो वो तो एक चीज़ है, मगर कॉन्क्रीट थिंग में आई थिंक द की एलिमेंट वाज फॉर अस टू पुट अप अ कैपेसिटी विच वाज मोर देन द लोकल डिमांड ऑफ दैट प्रोडक्ट. तो दैट gave us an exportable surplus, but that carried a huge risk in the sense that we were not able to export that 30-40% exportable surplus that we had in our capacity. That would mean that our break-even would be a problem, So what did we do to allay that? Or what did we seek to allay that? I think to allay that risk, one of the key things is the local tariff protection for the local sale that you make. Because when you have a tariff protection, that means that your commercial break-even, means the quantity that you need to produce to achieve no loss, no profit, is at a higher level. So you take that risk of putting up a higher capacity with an exportable surplus. So that is most important as far as we were concerned. Obviously, we had those ups and downs, as Umair said. We had to go through phases where that was disturbed. But Alhamdulillah, the other thing that we looked at while putting up this exportable surplus, to have a market where at least 1/4 of your exportable surplus is, I wouldn't say assured, but you have an edge there. So at least you know that 1/4 of your export is going to be a little bit easier compared to the rest 3/4. Then you have a base, you give a referral to that 1/4 and you expand on that. So Alhamdulillah, and then obviously pray. The third thing is grace of God, that market did not, or that edge in the market did not change while we came into production. And the fourth thing is that the challenges in exporting is that all these countries that you export to put up trade defense measures. We, in the last 15 years, had to face 5 trade defense measures 5 times. Country A, country B, country C, country D. And country D did it twice, or rather region D, because that was Europe. And we had to go to the European Court of Justice, we had to go to the WTO, and finally it was removed. It means that they did not impose the proper or the right calculated duty or countervailing duty. But it took 3-4 years. So for that, the other important thing is not to depend on one market when you're exporting. You have to have other markets which you can expand to.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So basically the key is that if we develop local capacities and we meet all the internal demands, so the excess capacity can be exported and we can enter into non-traditional exports as well. So my company also did the same. So we are producing a product for toilet soap called soap noodles. So we started with local production, but after meeting that, we had 25-30% excess capacity available that we are utilizing for the exports, and we are taking the advantage of these excessive freights. So those freights are giving us an opportunity to enter into the markets. And so recently, the government has signed this transit route with Uzbekistan via Afghanistan. So that will also give an edge to companies like us, so we can tap that market, and there's a big potential. And I would ask everyone, whoever has the surplus capacity, to see that market as well. So irrespective of the margin we earn on the export, we should do it, because whenever you do an export, there is some value addition, and that value addition is a profit for the country. So you must do that.
One thing I would like to add here is that when we talk of tariff protection, see, if you're investing with an exportable surplus, means your spare capacity, means, for example, you're investing $100 and you are exporting 40%, or you have exportable surplus of 40%, the tariff protection that you are getting is not on that $100. It's on the 60% of the capacity. So even though it may seem that you are getting 5%, 10% protection, but that is in fact half or 60% protection, because the 40% production is not being protected. So that one has to look at from that perspective also while giving protection levels.
Very, very true. Very true. Thank you very much. Ashish sir, my question to you is that, mashallah, your company has remarkable performance since you guys have acquired the company from that group. So would like to see your experience, kindly share your best sort of turnaround story and all this for the audience.
Sorry? Right. Yes. So the company was divested by AkzoNobel. ICI Pakistan was divested by AkzoNobel at the end of 2012. So the transfer of shareholding took place in December, in fact, 27th of December, 2012, and it was acquired by the Yunus Brothers Group, with the beneficial shareholding residing within Lucky Cement. And that's been a most incredible journey for ICI Pakistan. You know, we talk a lot about foreign investment, we talk about multinationals, we talk about attracting the overseas investor, but when you have a entrenched, vested, long-term local investor, that investor will always be more committed to Pakistan, and it's based on the experience of that local investor, you will actually be able to attract foreign investment. So that is absolutely key, that when we look at investment, and if you look at the kind of economic development, industrialization that has taken place in the region, right? All over Far East, Southeast Asia, South Asia, it's largely been driven by domestic investment. And you know, when you have an investor who has a long-term vision, you have an investor that understands the market, they have far greater risk appetite. They understand what goes with the territory, because it's not, you know, developing economies are not smooth sailing. They have their challenges, but with those challenges come their rewards. So, you know, for us, it's been a phenomenal experience and journey. But just one other thing that I would like to add, and this is just going back to the question that Shabir commented on, and which is, you know, when you have large investments, particularly in the petrochemical industry, these are capital-intensive industries, and you have large sort of things, size of capital that are invested. You can never get your demand supply quite right. Whenever you invest, there will always be oversupply. Yes. You will always have exportable surplus. Now, if you don't have the adequate protection to ensure that your domestic sales are maximized, you are always going to be prejudiced in terms of arriving at your economic break-even to be able to export. And you will always have exportable surpluses till such time as market demand catches up. It's very seldom that, like I said, you'll be investing and go into a business where demand supply will exactly match, or if there is such huge excess demand that you're actually short in terms of supply.
If you allow me to add here, unlike other industries which are exporting, if I'm putting up a weaving industry or a garment industry, if there is no demand, I don't get orders, my utility cost doesn't go up. I just close that particular machine or even close that particular khata if I have 2, 3, 4 khatas. But if I'm a chemical industry, petrochemical industry, there you have to run the whole plant, and if you scale down the plant, the utility consumption goes skyrocketing up.
Yes.
So therefore, the protection level is most important, unlike other export-based industries.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Zubair sir, I would like to ask listen from you about the success of your company as well. Being a local business, you have excelled in your product. So kindly share your views for the benefit of other industry as well, please. Thanks.
Actually, we started with a single product which was being imported at that time, and it was used in the, I would say, surfactant industries, making detergent powders and all these things. And at the moment, this product which we are producing right now is about 110,000 tons. And it is replacing the imports for about $150 million a year. If we were not producing it locally, so it has to be imported from outside. Here I appreciate one of the MNCs who guided us, that they were buying these products from Korea, China and other places. They asked us to put up this factory. We started with a smaller production capacity of 25,000 tons, and which in 10 years become 110,000 tons. And now the next step is, and we are already exporting our products to USA, to Africa, to South America, and also...
How much capacity do you export? How much?
Right now our export is about 20% of our production.
Oh, great. Great.
And in this export...
And in terms of value, how much is the...
Sorry?
In terms of value?
It is about $24-25 million.
Oh, that's true.
So the other thing is that in our price, 30% or 35% is the freight.
Oh.
With 35% freight, we are still able, we are exporting to US paying about $12,000 per container.
Okay.
But still we are able to compete in the international market. And now we are going for back integration. Right now we are importing our raw material from Saudi Arabia and Qatar. But now we have decided that we will put up our own back integration project for lab. And we are, UOP Honeywell is doing the feasibilities and all things. We have now reached to the point that we are going to sign an agreement in next 3 to 4 months' time.
Thank you.
And then it will not only provide lab to Pakistani market or Pakistani industry, it will also be able to export 50,000 tons of lab in the international market, where the value of that would be around 50,000 would be around roughly, because it costs around $1,800 a ton today. So if it is $1,800 a ton today, 50,000 means a lot of money.
Thank you, sir. Umair sir, in beginning, this plant has a lot of turbulence, lot of problems, so it changed hand as well. So since you took over, so in the last 5 years, you have shown, mashallah, phenomenal growth in the company and a lot of big turnaround on the bottom line as well. So it's a project which is really a landmark for the country. So we would like to have your views on the success story of this company, please.
I think when I talk about the story of our company, the word success doesn't come to mind, the word survival comes to mind. And frankly speaking, and that's the right word, I think it was the first petrochemical initiative in Pakistan. The UK government, the Pakistan government had to sit down together and sign a sovereign guarantee for this plant to be put up against certain government tariff protection, etc., etc. I think the point that was missed out at that point unfortunately, was that the kind of infrastructure that was required for this plant to run, nothing was there. Water, they had to put up a 54-kilometer pipeline. Electric grid station was to be put up. There was no effluent treatment plant. So there was nothing basically. It's like putting all the puzzles together to make this plant work. So that first 10, 15 years of the business where ICI was there and struggling and surviving, that was only because of high infrastructure costs. So the costs of this infrastructure was so high in Pakistan that they could not compete with the regional pricing. And as I said, pricing is not in the control of our businesses. We have to sell at international prices. Subsequently, when ICI exited and Lotte came to Pakistan and they wanted to make a footprint in Pakistan, taking up this plant, they were interested in PTA business. They were already doing PTA business in Korea. So when they come in at a tariff protection of 7.5%, and they have a very good plan with them that we are going to spend these 3-4 things. We are going to reduce our use of acetic acid by some recovery plant. We are going to put up a power plant to make our own electricity because the plant was losing production and higher variable cost because of repeated failures by Karachi Electric. And so this process plant cannot be dependent. It had to have it. So Lotte had a plan to survive at 7.5%. They stepped in. Within 1 year, our tariff went to 3%. So they just got a shock when they entered the business. Yes, so that was their first shock. And the owner of Lotte, whenever he has a dialogue with me, I get that opportunity once a year for 1 hour to talk to him one-to-one. And he always has this question, how is the tariff? I mean, he's sitting in Korea and he's talking about tariff. So this is the problem. Anyway, so the company has survived, and now last 5 years have been good for the company. It has a turnaround, and if I reflect on it, why is this turnaround? It is some stability has come. We have learned a lot to look internally to reduce our costs. But Madam Chairman is sitting there, and I've been visiting her, and she's been kind enough to understand. And this tariff has now become stable at a regional competitive level. China is 5%, India is 5%, so Pakistan 5% should remain intact. And that one thing has worked. It has given the major shareholders some stability that, okay, keep investing, keep doing this, keep maintaining the plant, it is okay, it's still a good business. So ours is a story of survival. And what I see as success is what I see in India and in China. In 1997, this plant was put up at a capacity of 450,000 tons. India was at that time 600,000 tons, very comparable. China at that time was 5 million tons. Today, China is 55 million tons. India is touching 7 million tons. We have the same plant which is surviving. Why? It's only because there is no policy, there is no guideline, there is no confidence in the investor that if I put $500 million, it is protected for the next 10 years and I will get some returns out of it. So I think we have taken a very big step in this symposium, and I hope that the message gets across and we do get a policy which is competitive and we can invest more.
Mayor Sahab, your experience, in fact, further strengthens our aim and our logic. Why to have a policy before investing any major amount in this country? Thank you very much, sir. Lastly, Jahangir Sahab, mashallah, you have invested about $200 million in this petrochemical project in the last 4 years, and you are now become a player of scale. So, would definitely like to have to listen your conviction in this petrochemical business and the way forward. Mashallah, tremendous performance. Your turnover has gone to double from the last year. And if I see from in the last 5 years. So it's 4 times almost. So good performance and very good job, son. Thanks.
Thank you. I think, I think very important point, I think, which you were illustrating is that if you are already a petrochemical player and how you perform in that business will set the stage for your next ambition and next level of investments in that sector. You know. If you are struggling, and I think Umair just illustrated the example of PTA. I mean, if you're already struggling, you don't have the conducive policies, why would you go and invest more in that business? So Engro obviously did an investment. Our first sort of forte in petrochemical was through our PVC investment, as Mr. Khalid Mansoor was also illustrating. And that business also struggled for a number of years. And one of the learnings from that business, struggle was that you can only do not bring small plants, bring a world scale capacity, and that world scale capacity has to be globally competitive. Now that is a much larger investment and a much larger, you need a much larger market size. That is a very important point. And as in this symposium, I think Riaz Khan also shared with us that there are multiple now intermediates which are reaching that level for the Pakistani market to achieve that world scale size. So once you are globally competitive, what does it mean? Your fixed cost, your variable cost, your energy efficiency, you're probably getting the best and the latest technology coming in for that. So you are generally, you're positioning yourself for, ideally being globally competitive, and that is an advantage with which you will start the business. Now, this is a much more bigger hurdle to cross in terms of investment. PDH polypropylene project, which we are looking at the maximum, the biggest size world scale plant which is possible, which will be more than the Pakistan's demand. So ideally, if you go out and buy a plant of the size which will be smaller or matches Pakistan's demand, economically probably it's more better for Engro to do that type of thing. But then long term, it will always struggle because you will not have that globally competitive technology with you. And that's an extremely important point. When that capacity comes on stream, you will have surplus capacity. I think Asif, you also illustrated. When you get these world scale plants, the government is not giving protection for that entire capacity. It is the capacity which will get sold in Pakistan. And some of that surplus capacity, because Pakistani market will eventually grow also, will earn you, foreign exchange in terms of exports. Maybe the value add is not that substantial, but still some money will be coming back to the country. And obviously you have created jobs for that, and there's a lot of sort of other businesses. And I think that's very important for us. So how your business, you perform in a business also sets stage that will you invest. Now, because last few years we started seeing some improvement, and I must say here that an important area which government has done is this, separation of FBR and NTC. National Tariff Commission has played a substantial role in how the industry now looks at their businesses. It's much more easier to go and talk to. It's a dialogue which is not just budget focused, but it can continue the entire year. And they listen to us, they understand, and in the end, objective is to protect all segments of that chain. So it could be downstream, midstream, upstream, and the cascading of the tariffs. So all that has really helped some of that stability which you are seeing in last 3 to 4 years in the petrochemical industry also. I think Umair illustrated, I think we felt the same change, and I think that change has been a great change. Now, NTC can play its role, but it's again a limited mandate. It's going to be for that year, and they do look at things. They don't change everything very fast, but there is no guarantee for investment that they can't change. So under a policy, as we said, that guarantee will come. Taking you back, so PDH, as I said, polypropylene will be a world scale plant. It will have opportunities of export for us. I think everybody sitting here is kind of committing to a world scale size. So there will be some surplus capacities in the beginning which will get exported, and that will be fairly large. Our own experience, we invested last year in 100,000 tons of additional PVC capacity. We are not world scale still, you know, we are at 300. World scale is more like a 500,000 tons to 400,000. So we still need to go one odd step more, which could be $200 to $300 million of more investment before you reach actually the world scale size. But just this investment created opportunity for us to, last year, because we had some surplus capacity, export approximately around $30 million worth of PVC resin. And that opportunity will exist even for the intermediate. Ideally, like His Excellency, the Korean ambassador said, Korea, bulk of their petrochemicals are being sold as part of cars and air conditioners and mobile phones. Those are the kind of value add, typically from a commodity, which is resin, to a product. If you make a nice product, a high quality world scale product, which the actual consumer buys, is generally 4 to 7 times price. So if you're just buying $1,000 of that resin, that $1,000 resin, if it goes into a product which has a branded value, it is 4 to 7. So $4,000 to $7,000 can be earned by the country, you know, if you put it in a product. So I think that downstream industry only develops when you have local production. Nobody has done it with fully importing their intermediates, or to date, no other country. Maybe Pakistan might be one, but I don't think so. Nobody has ever cracked that thing. And Vietnam is a clear example. As soon as their export industry boomed, they brought in intermediates now, and Vietnam is not selling any petrochemicals, but they are selling products which are made with petrochemicals and high-end branded products. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Further to your statement about the NTC's role in the tariff rationalization, Madam is sitting here, so I must appreciate the kind of effort they have put in last 3 years. That was enormous. They have reduced custom duty to 0, I think, on more than 2,000 items, if I'm not, I think it's more than 2,000. So that's really gave a lot of help to the country. So the only issue is that you very rightly said that currently we have the production, but there is no guarantee what will happen tomorrow. So with the change of hand, change of government, change of policies, everything changes. So the main purpose of this policy is to have something firm, guaranteed, so that investor has he focuses on the business rather than on saving his duties. So thank you very much for your valuable inputs. My last question to you is that what 3 things that you think Pakistan needs to stimulate investment in the petrochemical sector? Anyone who wants to add, please. Question is, what 3 things you think that you need for investment in Pakistan?
Yeah, so I think looking at these midstream petrochemical plants, the policy needs to address 2 things. One is the simpler thing, which is just decision making. That's about tariff and taxes and, you know, these kind of monetary impacts. The other, which is a difficult one and which the government needs to focus on how to do, is the infrastructure. And infrastructure is very important. I mean, you have a PTA plant somewhere in Thailand. It has effluent treatment facility provided by the government. It has water, power, everything is provided by the government, and there are synergies within the complexes, but that's something we miss out in Pakistan. So I think policy, I see that policy should be covering 2 basic things: what they are going to do about the infrastructure and what are they going to do about the tariffs and taxes.
Okay. Anything else, sir? Asif bhai, anything you want to add, please?
The one thing that we have to recognize, you know, we're talking large sums of money in terms of the investment outlay. You need to have predictability, transparency, and you've got to have a safe and secure environment. You know, no one has talked about security, no one has talked about safety. Reality is you have to have that. All these countries that have grown, all these countries that have invested, one of the things that they've had is they've actually had stability, political and economic stability. So, let's not please take that off the radar. It's very important.
Thank you. Thank you. Zubair sir?
I would like to say, let us just see about Lotte. Except in Pakistan, in every country they have expanded. I don't know how many times. As he mentioned initially, that we were 400,000 tons capacity in Pakistan for PTA. India went to, I don't know how many million tons, and 5 or 7 million tons.
7 million tons.
So we just analyze ourselves. The government should analyze what they have done wrong. They should, why they are not able to make this 400,000 tons to 1.2 million tons.
Yeah.
There was a requirement in the country. We are importing. Then there is an international market. So we can easily find out. You also know every year you go 2 months to FBR office. Why we should go to FBR office? We don't. Is this our business? Our business is to do production. Our business is to export, and not to beg to the government office that please do this, so that my business can survive. So they are just talking about survival of the business. And then another thing I would like to say for the local investors, they should invest with the capacity more than the domestic market. They should always have some exportable surplus. It is that surplus will go in the international market. Other thing is the domestic market demand is also growing. Right now, as we saw in the initial presentation, that we are just consuming 8 kilograms of polymer per person, whereas all our neighboring country, India, is 13. Then there are countries, there is 20, 25, 30, 50 kilograms.
144 as
yes,
well, I think.
144 is in the USA. But anyway, we don't say about USA, but at least this 18, when 18 becomes 16 or 20, how much scope for the petrochemical industry in Pakistan? And I believe similarly as this PDH plant is coming in Pakistan, okay, today is little more than our domestic demand, or maybe 30-40% more. But this all, whatever polypropylene they will produce in Pakistan, surplus will be exported. It will go like a sugar. Like sugar is exported, similarly polypropylene will be exported from Pakistan.
Surely. Thank you, sir. Shabir Sahab, any comments from your side, please?
You said that what the government should do, Mayor rightly said about the infrastructure, but one of the key elements of infrastructure is the port facilities. I think the government should now already start planning about improving or increasing the port facilities, because if you grow, then the bottleneck would be the port. So that's one thing that the government should do. The other thing is, as far as petrochemicals is concerned, is the turnover tax, because there's a big retarding factor. In the initial years, the returns are not that much. So this turnover income tax becomes a fee rather than an income tax. So that is important. And the other thing is that I wish Engro all the success, but when you put up a pioneering product which is not being produced in Pakistan, you have to remember that you are taking over the market of the foreign supplier, So obviously that foreign supplier loses that market when you produce local, when you're making a pioneer product. So you will face a lot of challenges there. They might start dumping or whatever. So the anti-dumping actions should be quick. And our experience so far is that even if they're quick, the importer lobby finds ways to, get around the anti-dumping. 4 years, 5 years, hardly 80%, 20% gets collected, 80% due to court stay orders, etc., doesn't get collected. So that is also very important.
Yes, you're right. Like we have been able to get the anti-dumping duties implemented, but somehow the other they were set aside by the court and all these things. So that's a challenge, another challenge. So let's see how to fix that part as well. Thank you very much. Jahangir sir, your comments, please.
So I think adequately covered by everybody. One, important element is that lots of good work also got done, like this NTC separation from FPR. Pakistan, unfortunately, has a track record of, going 5 feet, you move forward and then you go back 3 feet, That should not happen. And I think people have covered about infrastructure, and I think security environment also. When you do such large projects, ideally they will happen in areas nearer to the ports, Gwadar, Karachi, Port Qasim, or sort of nearer to the ports. Security environment in those regions have to be extremely high and, improved somehow, because a lot of expats have to be brought in to do those projects. And one incident and your entire, experts, subject matter experts, they just fly out. So I think some of the good policy moves which got done, and I gave an example of NTC as a very clear one. We are sitting here and talking about a further investment and talking about a policy now. If that step had not been taken and you were still sort of going through that FBR thing, the industry wouldn't even be thinking, you're always fighting every budget type of an approach. So that change has definitely helped us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And with this, I think we should end our session. And thank you very much for your valuable comments, and hope that these things will be helping the government in improving that policy. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much to my able panel, and my mashkook bag needs to be on stage before somebody throws it out of the venue. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. May I also take this opportunity to invite the honorable member of CPG, and she is someone who's always been a force for good. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome one of the Global Council members for ACCA. We have with us Ms. Ayla Majid. May I request her to please come up on stage and present mementos to this honorable panel. Thank you, Ayla. First up, maybe I request you to present one to our honorable moderator, Mr. Zafar Mahmood, CEO of Namir Industrial Chemicals Limited and the former chairman of PCMA. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to present one to Mr. Humair Ijaz, the Chief Executive of Lotte Chemical Pakistan Limited. One is for Mr. Jahangir Piracha, the CEO and Executive Director of Anglo Polymer. Thank you, Ayla. May I request you to please stay up on stage with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the advisor to the Prime Minister on Commerce and Investment. We are honored to have with us Mr. Abdul Razak Dawood. May I request you, sir, to please come up on stage and present some of the mementos, sir. May I request you to present the first memento to Mr. Asif Juma, the CEO of ICI Pakistan. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, to Mr. Shabir Diwan, the CEO of Gatron Industries Limited. Definitely not the least, may I request you to present a memento to the CEO of the Chemical Industries Limited, Mr. Zubair Dufail. Very insightful panel. Ladies and gentlemen, may I request you all to come together for a photograph. May I also request Mr. Riaz Khan and Mr. Mohammad Asfar Ehsan to please join us. Request our co-host, Mr. Sajid Aslam from the ACCA, to join this group photograph. Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for this wonderful panel. May I request Mr. Abdul Razak Dawood Sahab to please stay up on stage with us. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we are into the final session of our symposium. It's been a very insightful day. What we had were some key insights by the key players of the industry here with us in the panel discussion earlier. Next up, may I also take this opportunity to invite Rubina Athar, the chairperson of the National Tariff Commission, to please join us up on the stage. Sajid sir, may I also request you to please be on stage with us. Mr. Sajid Aslam, our co-host for this symposium from the ACCA. May I also request the President of OICCI, Mr. Rayaz Khan, to please join us up on stage and be a part of this final panel for the symposium. Ladies and gentlemen, a very important subject. The session, the final session is themed as the economic dividends of petrochemical sector development. I don't think, you're trying to convert the converted already. No one in the room is going to have any doubts that there are going to be big dividends for not just the immediate future, but for decades to come. It's a multi-decade investment that we're looking at. To kickstart this particular session, our first presentation is titled as The Tariff Structures to Support the Industrialization. For this, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Chairperson of National Tariff Commission, Ms. Rubina Athar.
Thank you very much.
Ma'am, would you want to take the rostrum or would you be making
I think I would rather like to
Yes,
go there.
please.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you and good afternoon and assalamu alaikum. I think I'll be very brief because Advisor Saab is here and he would be the key person to answer your questions or queries and highlight the government policy regarding the industrialization and more specifically this petrochemical policy. I would just briefly introduce what the national tariff policy is, and particularly with reference to this petrochemical industry and right now the policy, how we are looking at it, and what we actually intend to give tariff incentives, which most of the investors right now have just mentioned. I think we all understand that industrialization is critical for rapid growth and development of an economy. And in the last many years, we have seen phases of industrialization and deindustrialization in the country. So it is very important to address this issue holistically and completely. Besides many other factors, tax and tariff structures and their implementation are crucial for industrial development. I think most of the panelists here have just highlighted it. It is a fact that manufacturing is taxed heavily in this country, be it income tax, sales tax, or custom duties. Manufacturing pays more tax than any other sector of the economy. While manufacturing constitutes 12 to 13% of GDP, its contribution in taxes is more than 50%. Tax policy and tax administration had not been able to broaden the tax net and bring sectors like agriculture, retail trade, or services into tax net. Resultantly, our tax structure is characterized by narrow base, high and distortionary tax rates, and complicated and non-transparent mechanisms and procedures. Low collection from this narrow tax base, easy manipulation by vested interests because of non-transparency, and tax evasion and tax avoidance due to high tax rates has kept overall tax to GDP ratio very low in this country. What we have seen in past many years is that this compels policymakers to increase tax rates in a desperate attempt to raise revenue, but this policy has always failed. Higher tax rates have always hampered industrial growth, and since collection is heavily dependent on manufacturing sector, high tax rates have reduced collection rather than increasing it. And at the same time, high tax rates have also made exports uncompetitive and in some instances created an anti-export bias. Now with this background, in 2019, the national tariff policy was designed to bring down the cost of manufacturing and improve competitiveness of the export sector in regional and global markets. Though there is dire need, and also emphasized by the panel right now, to simplify the sales tax and income tax structures to encourage industrialization, but at least with this policy, we have started this long journey by giving a transparent, predictable, and simple tariff structure, along with strong institutional mechanism. And I think this is the major change in the policy right now to formulate policy. Policy formulation is now, and has been rightly mentioned here, is now separated from policy administration. I think this is the big change that we have brought with this national tariff policy. And we have seen the encouraging results, and also the panel here has just spoke about it, that this policy is working and bringing some good results into the economy. Talking of the national tariff policy, the overall objective of national tariff policy is to first improve competitiveness of manufacturing, and at the same time increase employment opportunities, improve consumer welfare. I think this has never been discussed in public policy, how to improve the consumer welfare, because we always ignore consumer in our policy. And finally, to enhance exports, because this is the need of the hour. To earn foreign exchange, we need to enhance our exports. And to achieve these objectives, the strategy that we have been following for the last 2-3 years is to gradually reduce customs duty, additional custom duty, and regulatory duty. And at the same time, provide time-bound tariff protection to strategic and import substitution industry. And thirdly, to simplify tariff structure and procedures. And practically when we say this, we mean that tariff rationalization is both across the board and within the value chain of any particular industry. So in the last 3 years, what we have done is we have gradually reduced tariff to bring the average tariff down. And at the same time, we have looked at individual industries and tried to rationalize the tariff within the entire value chain. So this is, we are following a two-pronged strategy to bring down the average tariff down. Tariff is cascading. What we've been doing is right now, we are keeping cascading tariff. And the cascading is based not just on the normal protection, but on effective protection. And I think industry well understand when we say what we mean by effective protection. Simplification implies gradual removal of all SROs and schedules, and streamlining of all custom procedures, for instance, export facilitation, duty drawback schemes, or valuation schemes. So we're looking at all though it's a customs domain, but indirectly it affects the cost of importation or cost of manufacturing. So we are also looking at the custom procedures and systems also. So in the last 2 to 3 years, what I can summarize is that we have done the trade weighted average tariff for manufacturing trade-weighted average tariff for manufacturing has gone down from 7.5% to 5.5%. And this is mainly done because of the more than 2,000 tariff lines we brought to zero. We reduced the rate, we reduced the ACDs, we reduced the RDs, we reduced the tariff on 11% slab, 16% slab, 20% slab. We almost touched 85% of our tariff structure, which are 7,500 tariff lines. So we almost touched and looked at, keenly looked at, and tried to rationalize tariff on those tariff lines. Another, I think, important thing to be considered is that tariff is cascading, but right now this cascading is very steep. We have 0 minimum and we have 20 maximum. So in between there are 4 or 5 slabs. So this cascading is very steep. So this at some times gives huge effective protection to some manufacturing sectors like auto and iron and steel. It reduces consumer welfare and sometimes lead to anti-export bias in some cases. We have rationalized tariff on textile value chain, and we intend to do it for auto and iron and steel, and wherever high effective protection is identified. So this is our plan for this and the next year. Coming to the petrochemical industry and petrochemical policy, we all understand that's critical industry in any economy. Along with the iron and steel industry, it's actually provide base for many other industries in industries in the country, like textile, pharma, leather, packaging, pipes, soap, detergents, etc. So it's base for many industries. The investment, whether greenfield or brownfield, would definitely bring a huge change in industrial sector and would generate employment. We have been meeting with the industry for a long time now, and we have very long discussions with them to fully understand what they are proposing and what they are expecting from government, which I mean is a fair and predictable policies. From the tariff incentive or tariff policy point of view, I think what we will look at is that plants are of world scale, which just mentioned that they are. We would also look at that industry is not overprotected, because as I said, we have seen the policies in previous time have inadvertently or advertently done that some industries are overprotected for a very long period. So I think our consideration would be that industry is not overprotected and for a very long period. We would also we would see that downstream industry is not hurt, and downstream industry also progress along with this midstream or upstream industry. And also, in due course of time, upstream and downstream industries are able to export. I think because import substitution has a cost, and if the economy bear that cost for a certain period, I think the benefit comes when it's able to export. So I think these are the 4 key areas or elements that while designing the tariff for this industry that we would look at. And we really appreciate this, this symposium, and I think it's a high time to have such kind of interaction and discussion involving all the stakeholders and the government, and we look forward to have a sound petrochemical policy and see this industry growing and prospering. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. And now, ladies and gentlemen, with the title that has been very promising, very intriguing to say the least, we have the subject of high GDP multiplier of petrochemical makes it a sector of choice for economic managers. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Honorable Advisor to the Prime Minister on Commerce and Investment. Please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Abdul Razak Dawood.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, distinguished diplomats, esteemed members of the business community, representatives of the public sector, panelists, Assalamu alaikum. Today I want to give an overview of what I feel that we should be doing as our industrial policy and how our industrial policy should move forward. Overall, the problems that we have faced, and this government, when it came in, it faced it, and we had to correct it. And that was, there was too much emphasis in our country on trading versus industrialization. It was a consumer-driven economy, mal mangao, bahar se, and when we run out of cash, borrow, and the world goes on. And there was this deindustrialization. Well, that is all stopped. We're now focusing correctly on industrialization versus deindustrialization. I'll give one shining example of putting your money where your mouth is, and that is, how did we stop one major area of trading, and now it is definitely clearly on the decline, and industrialization has started. And that is on the mobile phones. Pakistan was importing $1 billion of mobile phones. And it was all the KPIs coming in, under invoicing, oh, this, that, the usual stuff. Now that has all stopped simply because we brought in a well thought out industrial policy on manufacturing mobile phones in Pakistan. Every month I see the figures, local production going up, imports going down, and a couple of months ago we actually crossed the line. We're now manufacturing more than we are importing. So this is going on. I'll come back to it a little later. So here is a shining example, having the right policies, get these KPIs out of the way, and bring in the industrialist. So that was one very important thing that we're saying. The next thing was domestic commerce, important because it's import substitution versus export-driven growth strategy. We will not progress as a nation if we do not get into the world of exports. I know import substitution is important because import substitution is the first step. You manufacture, get up to critical mass, and then you export. So by talking a lot about exports, and exports, it's not that I am trying to belittle import substitution. Import substitution is the first stage of that whole process. So now we have another issue of an industrial policy between import substitution and export-led growth. So now, when we say export-led growth, who are the winners? Who should we pick? We've learned from looking at the strategy by Korea, Malaysia, Japan, etc., that they did this by picking. You cherry pick. There's no such thing as you don't do it. Yes, a country like America can do it. They will not cherry pick anything. So we've been doing historically textiles, leather, rice, sports goods. These were our traditional ones. Well, this has gone on for too long. Today, textiles is important simply because we're in the IMF program, and if we're going to ever get out of this thing and get out of the program successfully and be in a sustainable position to keep the IMF off its exports. Now, everybody tells me that you talk too much about exports and you support the textiles a lot. Well, as I say, the fact of the matter is that I do this because we need the dollars and we need them yesterday. We all know that. We're all in business. However, I have said it to the textile people and I will say it again here. Textiles in the long run is not going to take us where we want this country to go. Textiles cannot be the main, number one, 60% of our export. Textiles cannot be that if we're talking of exports of $250 million. Textiles is important where we are right now. $25 billion, $30 billion, that's not going to get us anywhere. So textiles is not the answer. Why? It's not because there's something wrong with textiles. It's simply that worldwide, the textile industry is not big enough. Textile industry is under $1 trillion. So we can't, whatever we do, it's not going to take us to a very height. So who do we pick? If we just for a moment, just take our eye off textiles and leather and rice, who do we pick? There are 4 players who can really take us very far. Number 1 to me is IT. And finally, in this country, IT is now showing their muscle. They are today, even though textiles is growing by 35%, IT grew at 47%. And it's smaller, but in 10 years it'll catch up. So IT is number 1. And the other beauty of IT is they don't have the disadvantage of this sector where you need huge investments. You need an investment that will take 3 years, 4 years to implement. The hundreds and thousands of freelancers, etc., can do it without much investment. Next one is agriculture. Agriculture is an area which is now moving, and we're getting more and more of our exports coming through agriculture. But on the industry side, there are 2 major sectors. One is iron and steel. Number 2 is the sector that we're here for, petrochemicals. And it's the petrochemicals is, to me, a future provided we think long, provided we think well, and we strategize well. And in that strategy, neither the Ministry of Petroleum is a total soul of knowledge, neither is the Ministry of Industries, neither is the Ministry of Commerce. We individually cannot do it. It can only be a collective effort of these various ministries, including Ministry of Planning and you people. Then we can have a long one. I am here today not to propound what I think should be a policy. I'm here today to raise issues that have to be solved in this policy that we want to make. What are the areas, me being in the government for the last 3 years, what are the issues before us? The good thing about this industry And that is, this industry has got a galaxy of professionals. It's got the depths inside their organization. It's fantastic. I mean, textiles is no match to you people. And I'm being open and blunt, no match. So now we've got to marshal that akal that's lying there in the organizations. You've got a people who can very quickly take over on the responsibilities. But what are the issues? The issues are, we learn from the PTA, ICI PTA plant that came up in the 90s. We learned a lesson from that. And that was that we give them protection. When does that protection go down? When does that protection become too much? When does that sunset clause come in? I'm not saying anything negative. I think the way the duty protection has come down, it's good. But now the same challenges are coming before us. Somebody comes up to me and naps the cracker. Somebody says, I want to put up a steel mill. The same issues are coming up. Honestly, I'd be very unfair to the country if we develop something to protect one industry and then for the next 10 years we're in a mess because we have to distort all the downstream. So that is one area. What do we do? In this petrochemical, we've got to think. We've got the world's best plants. A couple of hours flying time from here. All the fabulous plants that are in the Middle East. Can we strategize with them that they're doing this and we start from a certain point? We don't have to go all the way. I don't know. Quite honestly, or I'm erasing issues which you people have to tell us in the government. What should we do? One thing I have done, and I think it's the right way to do it, if a huge plant has to come up, polyethylene, polypropylene, naphtha, whatever you want, they must have in the country a good enough size of the market. We need that market. So one thing we can do, and we have done it, just reduce the duties on the end products right now. And let those products grow. So there's all the products that are coming out from polypropylene and from polyethylene and from PVC, etc., let them all create the demand, so that means a big plant comes up and they can feed it. But what is going to be the duty structure to give that plant the correct IRR that it deserves and the necessary long-term policies which it deserves and a proper policy on their taxation which it deserves. So those are some of the key issues that are quite honestly bothering me. Yesterday, we had a 4-hour meeting. All the stakeholders of the iron and steel sector, myself sitting with Rubina, grappling with all of them. Every stakeholder came in. Right from the SIP breakers and the re-rollables and the billet people and auto sector people, they want to do this, etc., etc. The good news was at the end of the 4-hour meeting, I think we're coming, the fog has cleared and we see the light at the end of the tunnel. I would like to do the same thing with this sector. What do we do? How do we clear the deck So you people are absolutely sure as to where you're going to go. As I was coming in, I heard one of the speakers say that Pakistan made 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, और ये एक मुसीबत है हमारे लिए. सच बात है. Such baat hai. I'm in the government, I'm telling you, such baat hai. But it's breaking it down. It's inshallah, it will. That's what we've got to do. Don't do these things. Soch samajh ke karo, and then stick to it. And then we will, inshallah, be able to get through it. So what I want to do is there has to be a whole, unfortunately I did not hear all the speakers, but I do want to, I'll be sitting down with the necessary people to sit down and say, okay, what did they say, what are the ideas, what is the recommendation from this symposium. We must not waste the valuable man hours that have gone from all of you in coming to this conference. This is expensive time of our executives. It must not go wasted. And then we come up with a policy, the tariff policy, Rubina has talked a lot about it, and our policy to go forward. One thing that I am fighting is that all that valuable land in and around Bin Qasim and steel mill, that it was, a lot of it, can you believe it, was reserved for the textile industry. First thing I said, get it out. The last thing you want to do is put a whole bunch of textile units down there. They go somewhere else. And it is now, I'm fighting it, I'm not all the way through yet, that all that has to be reserved for these 2 sectors, the steel mills and the petrochemical complexes, all of them. Because each of you, people say, 1700 acres, oh, बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं है. 3-4 units आ जाएंगे, they need 200-300 acres. So what have you got? No, we've got to reserve all of it, because that is the only way 15 years from now, 25 years from now, our petrochemical industry will be internationally competitive. That's what we've got to do. Do things today where we'll reap the benefits many years from now. So that's what I have to say. Many challenges yet. Many, and I'll say it again, many man hours of work that we have to do to think. And those of you who are coming forward, and I know 1 or 2 are coming forward, we will assure you that long-term policy, that the land is available for you people in a competitive place, and that the policy, together with the duty structure, is fixed. We have made a good amount of changes in the tariff structure, and we were just talking about it the other day. It was interesting that I said, hey, nobody seems to be coming to the Ministry of Commerce anymore. Kya ho gaya hai? Is everything okay? The reason why they're not coming, because things are getting okay, and I'm very happy. You should be spending your time in your own corporate world rather than wasting your time coming to Faisalabad, meeting the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, etc., etc. We give you the policy, you go ahead. Don't waste your time with people like myself. So that's what it is. This is a truly dynamic industry. And let's all work together in the coming weeks and months to put the thing in place and let this petrochemical and chemical, whatever, industry truly flourish, and let us say that 20 years from now, 25 years from now, I'll be gone into the other world. But then I hope that when I am up there and I see this industry flourishing, I will smile. Thank you.
Thank you, Raza Sahab. May Allah bless you with a long life and a healthy life. And it's more important, but I think what you've pointed towards is a very key question. What is going to be the legacy of each one of us is the onus every leader and anybody in any capacity to help the society, to help the country, must ask themselves. It's just not about our individual achievements, but what we leave behind. Ladies and gentlemen, throughout his presentation, we saw a number of people nodding and smiling. So I'm sure these key developments and the way the policymakers are thinking is something very close to your heart. But having all stakeholders in the room, it would be unfair not to open for a short session of question answers. Please raise your hands, or mic may be directed your way. Once again, I would request you to please make it a question and not long remarks. I see a hand go up. Please maybe direct a mic there. So please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Muin Bartley. I'm CEO of Think Build Scale Private Limited. Okay, so we've heard a lot of perspectives, and I think from the industry side, wanting protection, wanting stability of that protection, and then from the government side, you need to have just the right amount of protection which gets phased out. So you need that balance, and I don't think that there's been the discussion of how to arrive at that correct balance. So arriving at that correct balance in light of good examples globally, which other countries have done it and how have they done it, I think that's key. So my question is, how do we get the different stakeholders having different motivations, get them to everybody, government, private sector, to come to this problem and together to brainstorm and figure it out, how to get the right balance in light of global experiences. That is the crux of it, I think.
Whatever you said, that is the challenge. Now we have a few of our ministers in the government who are SMEs, subject matter experts in their respective fields. Asad Umar is one who knows the corporate sector very, very well. Shaukat Tareen on the banking side knows it well, etc., etc. Basically, it's our job to get the thing done and get all the necessary people. We know we'll have. We know that there are areas you've got issues you'll have with the energy ministry. You'll have issues with the FBR. You'll have issues in other areas. That's the excitement. That's what we have to do. Get it done and get it done correctly for you people. We will do it, inshallah.
Thank you so much for your question. There's another hand go up. Maybe please direct the mic to the gentleman in a white jacket.
Dawood Saab, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sohail Kiani. I'm an overseas Pakistani investor. You talked about petrochemicals and the steel industry and said that these are two very important, which I concur with you. Now, here's a very direct question. Right now, I'm doing a road show with the chairman of a steel company from Australia who wishes to set up a plant here or do a strategic alliance. But I have a very specific question because yesterday I went to meet the chairman of this new entity that your government has set up called the Exim Bank. So the question is this, sir, that proprietary technology transfer coming into Pakistan for the steel industry to make galvanized steel, which nobody else has in this region. Because you see, our bridges are falling down now after 30, 40 years because, the corrosion and rust, especially along the coast. Karachi, along the coast, because it's more corrosion.
Absolutely.
Okay, now, this technology lasts the steel industry, the rebars, for 130 years. Now, here's the question. If we set up a plant here and bring this technology here into a steel manufacturing unit and re-export that galvanized steel to China. By the way, the Chinese don't have this technology. Or to the Gulf Arab countries who don't have this technology. The chairman, he's going to be coming here any moment. I'd like to introduce you to him. He says to me, why should I set up in Pakistan? Why don't I set it up in India? Or in Dubai or Muscat? So I did not have an answer for that. Yesterday, when we went to see the Exim Bank, they didn't have an answer for it also. So my question to you specifically is, what will you tell this chairman who's willing to invest money and set it up here? What's his incentive to set it up here? Thank you.
Tell your investor that Pakistan will be very, very fair, open, and before he goes to anybody else, do give us a chance. You will find us very excited. We are prepared to go the extra mile. I'm prepared to go the extra mile because we don't want to lose. This is what you talked about. I know a little bit about this industry, and please come over. We'll be only too happy to discuss with you. And if for any reason it is not feasible in Pakistan, whatever reason, we will be upfront with you. We would never try to hoodwink you. We'll be upfront. So we are excited. Please come over, and inshallah, we can work something out. Thank you.
I'd like to take a question from the other side of the room. Maybe please bring the mic to this table. May a mic be directed here? Thank you, sir. Please introduce yourself and ask a question. We'll come back.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Masood Anwar. I have spent 55 years in industry, including petrochemicals. My questions is very simple. 30 years ago, we were talking about naphtha cracker. We were visualizing it will come. Now all the experts are sitting here. What do we envisage as a timeline for the naphtha cracker to be seen here with tremendous downstream potential? My question is simple, sir. Looking for the answer.
Masood, you have asked a very, very good question on the naphtha cracker. And just like you, we have heard, the first time we heard of it, sometimes it was naphtha cracker, other times it was the hydrocracker. And the first time we actually heard it was during Ayub Khan's time. That was the first time when there was no steel mill, nothing was around. We were talking about the naphtha cracker. One thing I can say is I hear very positive things about the naphtha cracker, and I hear equally strongly a negative side of the naphtha cracker. So I don't know. I am hoping that this seminar, this group of people will come up and be able to give us an answer. Is the naphtha cracker in our interest or not? And if it is, how does it fit in with the other, the polyethylene, the polypropylene, all the other elements that we're looking at? somebody has to be able to tell us. I have in my office, and I used to look at it, a complete flow chart of all the products that can be made before the naphtha cracker, after the naphtha cracker, and how the whole thing moves. But somebody has to tell us that yes, we'll put this piece in, then you put this piece in, the duty structures must have a sunset clause, etc. I don't know it. So I hope that after this symposium, people will come forward and will be able to make a sensible policy in our interest. The one thing we don't want to do is, one, we cannot have a structure which does not have a sunset clause. And we don't want a structure where somebody can make a lot of money in the first 3 years, and then we're all looking at each other, what have we gone and done? So let's see. I look forward to you people.
Razak Saab, with your permission, I believe Qiyas would also want to comment on this question. You good? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, there's another question by the lady in the brown jacket. If we can please have the mic directed to her. Ma'am, would you raise your hand so the person with the mic can see you? In the front row, please. That's a media mic. That's something you're not getting. But maybe one of the ushers could kindly get one. Ji, please.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. I'm Najma Minhas from Global Village Space. Razak Saab, I'm an absolute layman. I'm not very far from you here.
Okay.
I'm a layman, so I found this session earlier very interesting. And one thought that came to my mind from what Humair Ijaz, I think CEO of Lotto, mentioned, that his company stands exactly where it was 5 years ago here in Pakistan, whereas it's grown exponentially in different countries. So the thought came to my mind is, what is your ministry done in terms of regional research? Another example somebody has just given me is Reliance Industries has set up a 4 million ton plant, I think, in India. And the Indian government has given it, I think, 3-year tariff protection and so on. So what are your thoughts on this? And I really want to understand regionally, how much research have you done and how much of it will be implemented?
Can you answer that?
If I remember correctly, the comment Humair made was that they're at the same position they were there 25 years ago, not 5 years ago, right? So because they started at 400,000 tons and India was at 600,000 tons and China was at 5 million tons. China has gone to 55, India has gone to 7, and we've stayed at 400,000 tons. So it's a 2-decade problem. I think the question we have to ask ourselves is that the balance of payment crisis and the current account deficit that we have, the trade deficit that we have, as Pakistanis, we suffer because of it, but it's not a problem for the business, it's actually a problem for the country and the government. And one also needs to ask is that we are here as businesses crying out for a petrochemical policy. Why isn't the government convincing us as investors through a policy to invest more? It has to be a two-way street. And it should not be looked at as us wanting protection to make money. It has to be looked at as an incentive so that investment in the country can be made. So I think the reason why, coming back to your exact question, I think the reason why this hasn't happened is because over the last 3 decades, we have not been able to convert or come up with a policy for this sector which will provide that sense of security to local and foreign investors to come and make the kind of investments that are required. Because here we're talking about billions of dollars. And that's what I would have to say.
We'll take another question. The front row again. If a mic could be directed to Mr. Sameer
Yes,
Dosa.
please. Excuse me, miss.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Another part of the venue, so we're good with that. Please go ahead.
My name is Irfan Asghar, and I'm Vice President of Pakistan Chemicals and Dyes Merchants Association, North Zone. Sir, my question is that 2021 and 2022, these are the COVID years, and there are massive shortages due to fluctuations, shutdowns. I think it is not a good idea to expand on the basis of these 2 years. Let us focus what will happen after the COVID. Because China is going for a massive industrialization in petrochemicals. China is coming up. How do we see? Because these all raw materials will be imported, and we have to depend this industry on imported raw materials. Sir, we have one of the biggest salt ranges with us. Why don't we explore our minerals so that we are not dependent on any imported raw material? Sir, these chemicals are used for the downstream industry. We should focus that it should not add inflation to the economy, because we must keep a regulation that our prices offered are at par with the international market in the local market. So, sir, this is my question. I think when making these policies, these points should be considered. Thank you very much.
Thank you for raising these points, but yours is not really a question, but if anybody in the panel would like to respond to that, sir?
You know, on the mineral side, there's no doubts about it, that one of our biggest problems has been that unfortunately minerals has become a provincial subject. And so when you approach them, they get into a completely different style and structure. So the minerals have not developed. As far as something being manufactured based on imported raw materials, now I can say with my hand on my heart that about 60% of industrial raw materials are coming into the country duty-free. So if they are, then I think I would say that the government has done their job. And now it is up to the chemical industry, the petroleum industry, petrochemical people to find out what is that segment and look at it. So it is, I'm trying to get the government out and leave a playing field for you people to play. So that's what I feel. And you people come forward, and when you see hundreds of one tragedy in a way, tragedy not in another way, that when we had turf come out, bulk of the turf benefit was taken by the textile. How many chemical people were there? How many others were there who could have taken advantage of it? But they didn't. And when turf closed, that was it. And the main beneficiaries was the textile industry. Now I'm saying to the State Bank, it was an excellent scheme. Let us improve it, that whenever you do this again, make it sectorial. Put your money, give the working capital loans, give the long-term loans based on sectors that you want to develop and cherry pick. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll probably take one last question before we close this symposium.
Excuse me, Ji.
There's several to choose from, but since Samir Saab has stood up, for the rest of you, maybe request you, oh, there's another mic that a gentleman already has. If the two of you could share time and have brief questions, then maybe we can accommodate both.
Very short. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Samir Dosal, and I'm the president of the Canada-Pakistan Business Council. Aksab, wanted to just mention, this is phenomenal what I went through today and what I learned and what's happening. Tremendous opportunities, amazing discussions. People like Riaz, people like Asfaras and a whole bunch of people bringing in depth of knowledge. My suggestion and my thought process is for you to consider not taking away anything on the expertise of the people sitting here. There are millions of overseas Pakistanis outside who would be able to contribute without asking for remuneration towards helping create this policy. And perhaps that's something that Asfar Bhai could take an initiative, and you can take an initiative to lead to this, to explore technical expertise from people who are Pakistani origin, who would want to give back to the country and give back to Pakistan. So I think that's probably something to be addressed, perhaps. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir Saab, for that. Bahut shukriya. Maybe take the last question of the symposium.
My name is Haris Ahmed. I'm working with JS Group. My question is with Mr. Ghyas. We have talked and listened a lot on the naphtha cracker and the Lotte chemical plant, the previous experience we have. We have some challenges with the PVC also when it is in the initial stages. My question is why we have not considered, the Anglo has not considered a cracker. First of all, now it's not the naphtha cracker, it's a mixed feed cracker. Naphtha cracker to be used since last couple of years or maybe a decade ago. But due to the availability of low cost ethane from US, China is importing around 9 million tons of ethane. Why we cannot import 1 million ton of ethane for our cracker in Pakistan? Why the cracker serves you or gives you all the feedstocks which you need? First of all, it has a synergy with you for your PVC plant. It gives you ethylene. It can give you a propylene, and it also can give you a PX for the Lotte. If Lotte is going to expand, it will need more than 500,000 tons of PX in the next coming years. You are still importing around 100,000 tons of ethylene. And we are focusing only on the PP, polypropylene, though it's a growing market, we know, but there are big players coming in around Pakistan. UAE has already setting up a 1.8 million tons of mega cracker, the world mega cracker in Buruj. And they have also a next stage, Taziz, coming up with 1.6 or 1.7 million tons of cracker. So all these are going to produce propylene. They are focusing now propylene on that. Then Petronas has a joint venture with Saudi Aramco, and they are also going to produce some 900,000 tons of propylene. By 2025,
Harisa, what we are hearing is, of course, the success stories of many collaborations, and I believe your question is why such an avenue is not being explored. If you can kindly come to the question, there's one more in the waiting.
My question is, there is better synergy for Anglo to consider a cracker instead of a standalone technology for this PP,
You've made a
PDH
strong
plant.
case, sir. We'll let Riaz Saab respond to it. Bahut shukriya. Ji.
Thank you very much for your question. I think the point that was made earlier, I don't know whether this works. The point that was made earlier was that Pakistani market right now, because of a number of consideration, the market size for the product, the size of investment, the policy framework which is in place is better suited for producing polypropylene. The world is now going towards, moving more towards demand centers where ethane is used to produce polyethylene and propane is being dehydrogenated to produce polypropylene. That is now the go-to technology. It's very true that naphtha cracker will produce a much wider range of products, but Pakistan will probably reach that level where that entire range of products, including aromatics, will be used by the downstream much later. If you go with a typical naphtha cracker right now and a standard configuration, you will have to re-export about 35 to 40% of the products produced. Whereas if you go for a PDH technology, majority of the product, the only product that comes out of it is polypropylene. It allows you to put up a global scale facility and achieve the goals that we want to achieve. But you have a great question. Perhaps we can reconnect after the symposium as well.
Thank you so much for that, Riaz. We have one last question requested by Mr. Anjum Nisar. And this will be the absolute last question, I promise you.
Thank you. My name is Anjum Nisar, former president of FPCCI. My question to the Honorable Advisor, Razak Daud Sahab. Sir, there is a great potential because the demand is very much there in the country. So there is a great, one can say that industry can be, investment can be done. But sir, the bottlenecks, if we unable to rectify the bottlenecks, I believe the problem will carry on with the existing industry as well as we will not achieve the goals. My question is that with the Khyber, that is 9.75%, and the energy prices, can we compete with the rest of the world? We need to address this problem. Otherwise, I think despite of having room to invest in Pakistan, we will follow the same thing what we have been doing in the past. So Khyber 9.75% and twice the rate of your energy. That is a big bottleneck for the existing industry and the industry to come in the near future.
Bahut shukriya, Anjum Sahab. May I request Razak Sahab to respond?
Is that what your main concern is?
Energy and financing cost.
Energy and financing. As far as the energy part of it is concerned, I think you are as knowledgeable as any of us. We know Pakistan is not a low-cost energy country. For us to get into a becoming a low-cost energy country, it will take us a decade or two, or maybe at least a decade to get into a position where we've got the wind power coming in, we've got the hydro coming in, and some of the payments for the IPPs are gone. So that's a problem on its own. The other one is a more valid question that you've raised, and that is the financing. Yes, we are strapped for financing. We're a country that needs financing in every single sector, whether it's the SAS program, whether it's utility stores, whether it's supporting the farmers, etc., etc. So whatever we have available is less. I think the state bank governor, under some very difficult conditions of the COVID, did some very smart moves forward and helped in financing. We are always talking with the governor, and I think we are having some ideas to be put forward into the budget. Allah kare that we can get it done. But both the points are absolutely valid. Thank you.
बहुत शुक्रिया रज़ाक साहब. And ladies and gentlemen, I see a number of you keen to ask questions or at least make a statement. I have to regretfully decline, as in the interest of time, we now would like to wrap up this session. Once again, may I request all the gentlemen and ma'am on the stage to please step forward, as we'd like to present some mementos before we call it a close. For this, may I request Mr. Mohammad Asfaresan to do the honors. We'd first want to present our memento to the Honorable Ma'am Rubina Athar Sahiba. She is indeed the chairperson for the National Tariff Commission. May I request Sajid Saab to please come in for this photograph too. Thank you, ma'am. Next up, ladies and gentlemen, we'd love to thank and present a small token of appreciation to the Honorable Advisor to the Prime Minister on Commerce and Investment, Mr. Abdul Razak Dawood. May I request the Chairman BOI to do the honors. May I also request Mr. Riaz Khan to come in for a photograph for this one. Thank you to ACCA for being our co-host. Ladies and gentlemen, the Pakistan Petrochemical Symposium was hosted by the corporate Pakistan group that we commonly and popularly know as the CPG. To deliver the formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Sidra. What a fantastic session, what a fantastic day. I think these are the things which we need in Pakistan, where the government and the industry can sit together and the civil society can contribute and they can build a policy together. Pakistan is going through a certain transition from a trade to industrialization. That's not an easy thing. But industrialization is not possible without policy. Industrialization requires long-term commitment from investor, and at the same time, investor is looking for the predictable returns, the predictable policies. And the policies which are defined and developed collectively, those are the policies which can sustain, which has a very well-researched data, like what's happening around Pakistan and what's going to happen in Pakistan and how we will shape up that industry going forward. I think one area which is important before I close that one is to look at the scalability and why the scalability and policies are important, because we have to look at the circular economy. As long as we are importing products, we are importing, using and putting it at waste because we cannot recycle and reuse, refurbish that one. The scale of the industry really help us to create that circular economy to make sure that the environmental effects, the social impact and the governance side, the risk and opportunity which exists, we can capitalize it properly. And this debate really helped to bring the profit, returns, people, and planet together. And these debates are important for everybody to use their collective wisdom while developing this one. So that's why these symposiums, this discussion, this collective wisdom is very, very important for countries like Pakistan. And these ESG risk and opportunity, it doesn't end with the one industry. It's basically help you to really export, attract green funding. It's helped the all allied industry which are consuming these petrochemicals to export as well. When they look at the traceability and sustainability line, if we are unable to really reflect through our policies and actions and traceability, then even if the synthetic fiber which is being built and the textile is being exported, that will have their own challenges. So these policies really help to really see the holistic picture and really build it together. So thank you very much. I would like to thank our worthy minister, government officials, but above all, you people to really actively participate, to participate in today's debate and giving your feedback and direction there. And at the same time, we would like to thank all the partners who have made it happen, and they are bringing that intellectual capital to put that on the table and bring that to the criticism, to the feedback, to review, and particularly for the feedback for collective wisdom and putting together the policies which can sustain and create that inclusive growth which Finance Minister was talking about. Thank you very much.
I will request Advisor to Commerce and Investment, Mr. Abdul Razak Daud, to present the shield to our co-host, Mr. Sajid Aslam. He's a global policy of public sector. Please contact Board of Investment and we are here to facilitate you. Pakistan, Paindabad.